well. I led my first D&D campaign. There we go. Yep, just making sure. Oh no. Oh, we got that stupid hand wave thing in there. Anyways. All right, hello. Hello. Hi. So, I thought I would share with you guys what happened with my first ever D&D campaign because it was a lot of fun. It went over super well. I think you guys know if you go back through the let me make sure my audio is fine. Yeah, okay. So if you go back and you check the live chats section of my channel, I've done quite a bit of prep work. Matter of fact, while I'm here, I might as well flip over to it. I've been telling you guys, been preparing for this for a while. And I've been live streaming, not all of it, but like good sized chunks of it. Yeah, the live stuff we've done quite a few 2-map writing sessions, just a regular writing session. And so, yeah, now I actually get to share with you guys what happened, because it was something. It was quite something. Also, if you are a new GM, DM, whatever label you want to slap on it, if you're the guy leading the game and you want to learn about how to lead the game, I have some interesting tips and tricks of things that worked for me, things that didn't work for me, things that I'm going to do differently, things that I'm going to keep the same. I'm going to try to share information so that if you've never heard of D&D before, or if you want to lead yourself, this will be an okay guide for you to kind of get started. All right, so also I do kind of want to look at the document. Let's see. Let's scroll down to right here, because this is the part where a lot of the students really liked this section over here. All right, so first things first, I wanted to do a game where they start off captive, and I think I've explained this. They start off and they're going to be doing like a sports thing, so when we start the next session, they've been taken to where they're being held, they're being put in the barracks, and then at the start of the next session, right away, as long as there's no new players who need to create a character, right away, they're going to be introduced to the arena and to the game. And that's when they really get to see things start to happen, and they really get to start interacting with the world. The first session was just a lot of fun stuff, but the second session, we're going to really start to get into more of like the meat of the story. And so far, I mean, they're really jiving with the story so far. It's gone over stupidly well, and I'm really happy with it. One of the things, I'll go ahead and tell you, one of the things that I'm glad that I did as a new GM is I'm glad I prepared. I am glad that I at least took a couple of sessions to sit down and write. I probably logged a good 20 hours into trying to come up with ideas and to write things. You guys got to see good probably 4 to 6 of those hours. Just to get some like game prep stuff and to get a rough general outline. The way that I usually do things, especially if I think you guys have seen like with this channel or with Mongoose Productions, if you follow Mongoose Productions. If you don't, you should follow Mongoose Productions. A lot of what we did and still do is we start with a very general idea, and we start with a very general direction that we're headed, and kind of fill in the blanks as we go along the way. So like any key points, like any like key, like for example with Mongoose Productions, the key punchline was written, the key starting place was written, and anything that's important along the way is written, but everything else is just freestyle. Have some fun, improv it, and honestly, I really like doing mostly improv stuff. Improv stuff is fun, and the amount of planning that I did gave me enough structure to keep the story intact while still allowing for some freedom. And this next episode, the first episode was very, very structured, even though they did some pretty wild things that I'll tell you about in a minute. I gave them enough structure that there was a story in place, and I tried to show them like, this dude will kill our characters if we step out of line. And now that I've done that, I'm going to let them play around with the story a little bit. So the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to tell you basically how the night went down bit by bit. Okay, so everybody gets there. They start creating characters. Two of the players have played D&D before, not like extensively, but like enough that they know that they're going to enjoy it. So they join in, and they're creating their characters, and they're helping out one of the others who's never played before. I'm helping the other three create their characters. And so we get everything going, and it's going great. I introduce the world. They wake up in a containment cell, and everybody's kind of fuzzy, and I let them, as they're kind of stirring awake, roll for perception. That way they can look around the inside and try to see how much they can figure out. Well, the first one to roll, our sweet college friend, she just gets up and she rolls a 3. So I tell her, all right, what's your character's name? Kim? Kim is staring at the wall. Kim wakes up in a dark room and decides the best idea is to stare at the wall. Two of the other characters get a pretty decent overview of the room. And there's one character. This is very interesting. This character is being played by one of our students that's probably like getting close to legally blind. The entire night, he never rolled one bad perception roll. As a matter of fact, I think the lowest perception roll that he got was a natural 13, which got moved up to like a 15. So he saw literally everything. And so, of course, what does he do when he rolls? His first roll was a natural 20. He sees everything around the room. He's able to figure out where all of the little secret compartments are that I've hidden inside of this containment unit. He sees every character is able to make out exactly which race every character is. And the very first thing he decides to do, I say, this is the setting. You're all awake. Some of you are not looking at walls. The floor is yours. What do you want to do? And this character with perfect perception, played by a dwarf named Shorty, says, I'm going to punch his character in the face. Of course, that's the very first thing that they decide to do. These guys are best buddies, by the way, so this was well received. He rolls a 17. And so he decks the guy. I let him roll a d4. I said, all right, so I'm going to give you one for bludgeoning damage, but because this is a surprise attack, I'm also going to let you roll a d4 for extra damage. He gets a 4. They started off at 10 health. He decks the guy for half of his health right off the bat. So I know this isn't entirely how it's supposed to be played, but it's okay. Like, for most of them, they don't know how it's supposed to be played, and the two that do know don't care. So I just rolled with it, and I said, all right, what's your character's name? Lightning Joe? Gosh, Lightning Joe. All right, Lightning Joe, roll to see if you're unconscious. He rolls like a 10, so he's kind of like woozy and whatnot. Shorty realizes he just punched the lights out of a completely innocent person. And so he decides that he's going to try to heal him, and he gets him back to full health. So all of this is happening, and I look over the others, because these two have played D&D before, so I look over the others, trying to encourage them to play. It's like, okay, so you guys just heard, and Kim, you saw this happen. How are your characters responding? Well, Kim said, well, I think that Kim just messed herself. I'm like, all right, it's canon. She pooped herself. So what you guys hear is a loud crack, followed by a loud boom, boom, followed by a nice long... And so, yeah, Kim pooping herself became the joke of the night. And so once all of this happens, they hear a human voice, the only human in the group. I let them choose because it's a church. I had to remove a lot of magic stuff. And I said, all right, so we're just going to keep it really, really simple to where even the most strict of the church people would be okay with it. We're going to go Lord of the Rings rules. Okay, so the enemies are orcs, and the people that you can choose from are dwarves, halflings, elves, and humans. Nobody chose a human, so they hear the voice of the sole human in the room speak up and go, what in the devil is going on here? You punched the man for no reason, and then you, poor lady, just crap yourself What is going on here? Can you just calm down and let's just talk for a minute? The dwarf and the halfling look at each other and they say, I think we could use him as a battering ram. They roll contested strength. They win. So they pick up this poor human whom I was intending to be a very important part of the story. They pick him up and just ram him into the wall. So they hear it stop. They hear the vehicle that they're being transported in stop, and they hear an orcan voice go, "Hey! If I hear any more noise back there, I'm going to come back and take care of it myself." The dwarf and the halfling look at each other and says, "We're going to slam him into the wall again." So they slam him in 2 more times while screaming at this orc. The other three players, because one of them came in late, the other 3 players are trying to get them to stop. Like, dude, seriously, stop. So then they hear the hatch open up. It's so bright that it blinds all of them for a moment. 2 hands reach out and grab the dwarf and the halfling by the throat, lift them up, and basically threaten them and say, if anything else happens, slams them together, does some bludgeoning damage to them, and says, if anything else happens, I will kill you and leave you in the desert. They shaped up a little bit after that, but they were still their finicky fun selves. So after that, they actually get to talking and whatnot. And they're able to get a couple of things. Like, for example, when they slammed the dude against the wall, I told them that there was an air vent. And what it is, I haven't told them yet. But what it is it allows the orc villains to pump in noxious gases that knock them out. Which happens in a little while. So they discover that this vent was knocked loose. The vent cover falls off, and so the dwarf, finally realizing, oh, I've got to play smart because I'm being captured right now, he ends up stealing the vent cover to say that he's going to try to use it as a weapon in the future. Smart thinking. I'm going to reward that. So the other players get to talking to the human, and we bring in the last character for the group. They start to talk a little bit. They're trying to make alliances. It's like, we're all one big team. I'm making alliances. Trying to be all spooky and whatnot. Here's one thing I will say that I wish I did, and this is probably when I wished that I had done it a little bit more. I wish I had given clear expectations to the people who'd never played before. And it didn't really cause a problem because everybody is super excited to play again, so it wasn't a long-term issue, but I do wish that I had said, okay, so this is generally how the game is played. That way you guys know what you're getting into, and it's not, and because it was, I mean, like, the first, 20 minutes were just chaos and hilarity of literal crap and throwing humans against the wall. So they get to talking and whatnot, and this is the part where everybody's kind of figuring out how to play. They try to make a plan to escape, but as they're getting ready to execute their plan, they arrive at their destination. And they're told, they're given a whole bunch of little gauntlets on the ground. They've got different colors on them. There's some red ones, some green ones, and some black ones. And they're told to pick one. So they choose theirs, and then they get to find out what they're for. These are their duty assignments. These are their work assignments while they're in captivity. So for the ones that chose the red ones, they are going to be on food duty. And they are put under charge of this massive 7.5 foot tall, ginormously fat orc. I show them his character sheet because everybody else is got a pretty balanced character sheet, but I wanted them to feel the fear of this character. The strongest person in the party had a 17, I think it was a 16 or a 17 strength. I gave this character a 20 just for the heck of it. And they're all at level 1. Which means I'm going to make him stronger. They looked at that and went, oh gosh! I said, this is Blurp. Does anybody want to shake Blurp's hand? Four of them decide they want to shake Blurp's hand. He sweeps up all of their hands at once, squeezes so hard it does a point of damage to everyone, and they live in fear now. But they're friendly with him, and I'll get to that in a moment. So then they get to meet the Green. The Green is for the mechanics, and it's this English-sounding orc who's kind of got a body like a pear shape. He kind of wobbles out, very obviously crossed eyes, has these glasses that stick out like really far from his face. You guys help me write that. He's got these glasses that stick out super far from his face. And so one of the characters, it was the halfling. The halfling decides, I'm going to test their intelligence. I'm going to write in the poop mess back here and see if they know how to read. And so he literally just walks back to the poop mess and he writes, can you read this? And then the one that they just introduced, which is Lemigon, the mechanic, Lemigon looks at it and says, well, I don't really want to know how this came to be, but yes, I can read that. And then Blurp just kind of looks and goes, so then they get to introduce the black gauntlets, which are for the medical and the body disposal. And out walks this lanky, little bit less than 6 foot orc. They don't know yet, but he's a half orc who's kind of rejected from society, which is why he's doing this job, as nobody else wanted this job. And they meet him. He's got a big old hood pulled up over his face. And he's just kind of like droopy and just like quiet and whatnot. He's like, yo, yeah, we're going to do the medical and the body disposal stuff. Just don't cause any problems, and there won't be any problems. Are we fair? At that moment, one of the players realized that she's got the hots for this guy, whose name is Tarek. She's got the hots for Tarek, and is probably going to make a move on him. So everybody's got their assignments, and they're walking back to their barracks with Tarek, and they each get to ask a question before they get there. So they start to talk and whatnot, ask some questions about things. Are we slaves? Yes, you are indeed slaves. What time are we having to get up? 6 o'clock. And so they go through all of this. And then Tarek just kind of stops him in the hallway and says, look, I don't like killing people. I don't like what's happening here. And I don't want it to continue if there's a possibility of it stopping. But I also like living. And he pulls back his hood a little bit, and he's got this giant scar, goes all the way to his back, and, you know, a couple faces go. And, oh, I forgot to mention, the big orc that beat the two up earlier, his name is Gregnog. He says, I've been on Gregnog's bad side before, and I don't want to be there again. So I will be very lenient with you. You can do pretty much anything that you want, so long as you don't get me in trouble. I will not fight with you, but I will not fight against you so long as you do not cause me any problems. I like my job, and I like being alive. And as he starts to walk away, the halfling decides, I'm going to search his pockets. So he rolls a sleight of hand, and it does okay, except that Tarek's roll was better. Tarek notices, grabs his arm, slices his knife up his arm until he gets to his neck and says, next time that happens, I will kill you. And that's when they get back to their barracks. It was a really fun time. I'm glad they enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And I knew that once it happened, once I led a campaign, I'd be a forever DM. Because it's just fun. It's just so much fun. So the things that went great, I think that the characters are very well loved. I think that all 5, because there's 4 orcs so far. There's going to be 5 next time. The 4 orcs and the 1 human, they really like they've at least somebody has bonded to each one of these. Like they're already trying to plan how to kill Gregnog. They are. I mean, like one of them fanning herself every time Tarek walks in the room. I think that the mechanic team is really going to have fun with Lemigon, because he's a fun character. We have written in that he really likes practical jokes and pranks. And he's fine getting in trouble for practical jokes and pranks. So they're going to bond with him. And even poor little Philip, the human that just got smashed up against the wall the moment that they met him, one of the characters felt really bad for him and asked if they could be friends. So that it went over really well. The characters were just so well received, and I'm so happy they were because character development is what I pride myself on. I pride myself on character development things. That is probably one of my biggest strong suits. Now, something I wish I would have done better was describing scenery. Because that was one of the things that one of the characters who played D&D before asked about when they were being led to their barracks. They wanted to know what was around. They wanted to learn absolutely everything they could. It's like, oh crap, I planned out the maps, but I didn't plan out this part, and I've not been describing it. So I'm gonna have to start describing the scenery a little bit more to you guys, so that y'all can actually get an idea of what's going on. So I had to and I'm fine coming up with things on the fly, but I had to come up with it and on the fly and give them something to perceive. And I said, all right, so the hallway that you're walking through, uh, they seem to be like very meticulously organized. It almost looks like kind of a grid structure. Um, there's a lot of long hallways, and you can tell, like, as you're walking through it, that hallway's connected to that hallway's connected to that hallway. So this would tell you that this will be pretty easy to navigate if you're free to roam around. And so that seemed to be fairly acceptable to him, and so I was happy with that. But I do wish that I had thought a little bit more about the setting, because me personally, I very rarely think of the physical surroundings. My wife's dwarf nickname for me is Aloofy, because I'm usually aloof. But I mean, that's one of my biggest weaknesses is surroundings. If I'm alert and I'm like looking for danger or something, then yeah, I know exactly where I am. I know where everybody is, and I'm keeping an eye on anything that moves, and I'm skeptical of things that don't move. But just generally hanging out, walking around, I don't notice like anything. I'm very easygoing when it comes to surroundings. And that's one of the parts I realize I'm going to have to step up before the next session, is I'm going to have to describe the scenery and the settings a little bit more, even if I just give them one thing to hold on to. I need to give them something that tells them a little bit about their surroundings. All right. What else? Is there anything else that happened? I don't think there's really anything else important at the moment. I would say, I'll say this. For any first time game masters out there who are looking for some advice or are looking for some encouragement, if you're built for it, you're built for it, okay? If you're a good storyteller, then this is going to come easy to you. It came easy to me, and I'm actually going to have to try to figure out how to rework our schedule because I think they're going to want to play this all the freaking time. So, but I would say that the biggest thing that you need to do is just get a story and go with it. Excuse me. If you're like me and you like to control literally everything, make your own story. I've got all this here that I've typed up, and this is just the beginning. I've got this. I've got my own maps, which you guys have seen before. I like to create and control a story myself. If you don't, or if you don't have time for that, there's plenty of stories that you can just pick up. Like, for example, gift that my wife got me for Christmas. Let me see if you guys can see it. My wife got me this book for Christmas. Game Masters, Traps, Puzzles, and Dungeons. And this has got, I think, 3 one-shot adventures in it as well, which is awesome. I love that. But on top of that, there's also the popular books. They're expensive, but let me show you one that I have. So this is the one that I bought a while ago. And I didn't really buy it because I wanted to play the adventures. I bought it so that I would see how it was laid out. And that way I could do better at writing my own. So we have Horde of the Dragon's Queen. So it's a little bitty book, but this is a whole adventure right here. This is a whole adventure with multiple sessions worth. Like it's broken down into like little chapters, and each chapter can be like an entire session. So if we were to do that, if we were to break this down and say we're going to get through an entire chapter every session, you got 8 sessions worth here. A lot of D&D groups meet either once every other week or once a month. So that could take you anywhere from, let's say, 2 months to half a year. So it's very, and on top of that, I would actually recommend buying something like this. This one was cheap. How much was this one? It was cheapish. Uh, the price on this one says $30, but I think this was marked down when I bought it. Um, even if you just like grab somebody's book and borrow it so that you can look through, and that'll give you some advice on how to structure your stories. The biggest thing that I can tell you to do, and then the thing that which is why I focus so much on the character development, focus on your characters, because if they love your characters, they'll put up with the other stuff. They'll put up with with the lack of like scenery stuff, maybe having a few less encounters. If they actually enjoy talking with these characters, they'll love it. And that's one of the big things I noticed is like when I introduced the the very very over the top halfling and dwarf pair to Blurp, I was like, oh man, they're gonna be able to pull so much over his eyes. They're gonna be very careful because they don't want to die, but they're going to enjoy being able to be sneaky around this guy. Um, the girl characters are really gonna like Tarek. Some of them are really going to be interested in Lemigon. I know I said every mechanic is Scottish, but it was in the moment and they were writing in poop, so I defaulted to English. But for the next time that I do this, which will probably, I'm hoping, will be with like Mongoose and whatnot, uh, I'll probably try to make him Scottish. But anyways, the character development was my biggest thing that I was happy with, and it's the biggest thing I'm going to work on going forward. I'm going to continue to brush up on the areas that I'm weak, like painting maps and whatnot, but I am going to spend a lot of time focused on these characters because the characters are going to lock them in, and it will make them either super sad or super overjoyed when a character dies. I've already got a plan for a character to die, and it's going to be very tragic. I've got a plan for a character, and this is all subject to change. There's only a few things that are set in stone. Like this first session, a lot of it had to be set in stone because they needed to understand the world that they were in. Um, and I don't have plans for a death of. No, I've got one where they're going to be able to choose whether or not a character lives. And I really think that that's going to be a very difficult choice. Because one of the. I'm not going to spoil too much of it because you guys are hopefully going to get to see it. But one of the characters has really latched on to this character that I'm debating killing. And one of them has really made an enemy with them. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the story develops. I'm excited for the second one. If you're a big time game master yourself and you've done this before and you have any advice or any hints or whatnot, please feel free to put them down here. And I would just go ahead and say, even if I don't use the advice, I would recommend any other new DMs or GMs or whatever. Use that advice for the first couple of times that you're planning. This is like months of me preparing for this. So I've had time to think through a lot of different things, but I would like to still improve and give them the best game possible. All right, that's all I got for now. I might give you guys some updates in the future. We'll see. I'll let you. Let me know if you want to hear more updates and more stories and whatnot, because I enjoy it and I like talking with you guys. And maybe in the future I will actually do a live stream when you guys can see it, rather than when nobody's online. Oh well. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. I'll see y'all later. Oh, before I go, tell me about your first encounter with Dungeons and Dragons. I'm very curious. I'll end with this. So my very first encounter with Dungeons and Dragons, I decided to sit in on a session. I knew that I would like it. Excuse me. But I had never sat in on it before. I just heard people talk about it. So I sat in on a session with Jeb. You guys know Jeb. And at the time, I hadn't created a character yet, and I was still like getting ready to create a character. So they let me control an NPC for a bit. And it was just a little gnome. I think it was a gnome. What did they name him? Oh, I forgot what his name was. But he owned a pub in the town, and so they were out doing some kind of like adventure or something, or they were going after like a dragon or something. And then suddenly they look back at the town, and the town's been destroyed by the dragon. And so, what was it? My character goes running. Oh, and apparently my character was naked. Yeah, because he was like a werewolf or something, a werewolf gnome or something like that, and so he's currently naked. That's what the adventure was. Yeah, they had just got done stopping him, and they had thankfully spared him. So he's running full sprint back to the town, completely naked, dingling, flopping around everywhere. Of course, you know that. And so when he finally gets to the town and there's like nothing left of his pub, they just sit down with him and they're like, I'm sorry. Listen, I wish that we could do something, but we've got to go right now. And so I just trying to ham it up as best as I could. I decided to try the Scottish accent. It worked 60% of the time. I said, aye, lad. We'll move on. This tavern's been in my family for generations. Please, when we have the time, let me weep over it. And I didn't mean to do it, but apparently I was trying to add flavor to a character that already had a lot of flavor, which made that moment really sad for everybody who'd been playing that for a long time, because that's where they started off the adventure, in his tavern. And so now the owner of the tavern, where they all got to meet each other, is weeping over the destruction of his tavern. And they said, all right, when we're done with this dragon, we'll weep together with you and we'll help you rebuild. And so it was a very sweet moment. Oh, and then I got surrounded and had to use Thunderclap over and over to somehow miraculously survive. There is no way I should have survived that encounter. But yeah, that was my first experience with Dungeons and Dragons. It was so much fun, and I'm loving that I get to carry this on and introduce more people to it, and that I get to use it as a means to help bring people closer to Jesus. That's the goal. That's the dream. All right, guys.